Good afternoon, everybody. It is 4:45 p.m. Eastern Time, October 5th, 2017. All right, we're tracking Tropical Storm Nate, which has unfortunately, guys, caused 17 deaths in Nicaragua as of right now. It's about to cross the border into Honduras, so that number may rise, unfortunately. There's an article here about the vice president talking about these deaths. 17 deaths so far, mostly flood related, not so much the wind. We're still at 40 miles an hour. But just to give you an idea of what even a tropical storm can do to an area, 17 deaths reported already. So, guys, I'm still sticking by my previous forecast with the possibility and potential of a Category 4 or 5 storm. Even a Category 3 would be devastating. And really quick, I want to explain to you why I'm saying that. I explained it in my previous video from last night, and some people were basically calling me crazy, saying, oh, they're projecting it to be a Category 1 or 2 or a 3. That's nothing. Guys, that is not nothing at all. People, I believe, are being desensitized because of all the hurricane talk lately with Category 4s and 5s, and this season we've had. They believe that a 3, 2, or a 1 will do nothing, and that is so far from true, and that's how people get hurt. Now, I don't try to scare anybody on this channel. Anytime I say something, I try to explain it with data, and I explain different situations. I never make predictions. That's why I use the word potential, and the potential is here. I'm going to show you why. Once this storm exits the coast of Honduras and enters these warm waters, we may see something called rapid growth. They're actually doing specific segments on this on the Weather Channel right now, which I haven't seen once this season, besides when they were talking about how fast Maria grew. Maria went from tropical storm to a Category 5 in 26 hours. Okay? It's going to be in this area for about a day. That is plenty of time for this storm to possibly raise into a Category 3, possibly a 4 in this short period of time. But the concern is this. If you notice this gap between Cancun and basically the Gulf of Batabano, I believe it's called, right here. It's called shooting the gap. It's a hurricane term. When storms shoot this gap, it means it hasn't hit land and won't stun its growth at all. And if this thing comes off the coast of Honduras, enters these super warm waters with no shear wind influence whatsoever, we can absolutely see that happen. Now, of course, we don't want hurricanes to make landfall, but the only thing that's positive for this storm as of right now would be a landfall around Cancun or this area of Mexico to stunt its growth. It's not going to kill the storm by any means. We need to understand that this was a tropical depression before it entered Nicaragua, and it's on its way into Honduras, and it didn't weaken at all. All it did was stunt its growth. It's still a tropical storm. It has not decreased back to a tropical depression as of now, and it's basically guaranteed that once it enters these warm waters here without any shear winds, it's going to grow. Now, we don't know for sure if it's going to be rapid growth. The only point I'm trying to make is that it's basically the same conditions that Maria had within a 26-hour period, and it's going to be in this area for about that long. Now, once it enters or hits Cancun, Mexico, that'll stunt its growth, but then the Gulf Coast, the Gulf waters are still very warm. This thing will still grow on its way to the coast, and that is why they're issuing state of emergency in Louisiana and in Florida. I have two articles pulled up. This is Governor Rick Scott, who had a press conference. He gave 29 counties state of emergency levels. They're listed here. I'll put this in the description box. And also the governor in Baton Rouge, he also issued state of emergency for areas there, as well as some mandatory evacuations already, and this thing is just a tropical storm. So you need to do that math in your head and understand that this is not a situation to go light on. Regardless if it's a tropical storm, Category 1 or Category 5, this is going to be a major storm, and it's going to hit the coast in the Gulf. That's what we need to remember here. Alright, really quick here, this is our visible radar chart. This is the one you can see based on the light bouncing off the tops of these clouds. It's a little more detailed than our water vapor chart, and I've cut off part of it because it shows darkness. You can't see anything. But you can see here, Nate is basically crossing the border into Honduras right now, and it's on a track that basically takes it right over Cancun and then into the Gulf. More of the models are showing Louisiana at this point, but because of the state of emergency in Florida, that obviously goes to show they just don't know exactly what's going to happen when it gets into the Gulf. Now, a couple things here. I want to give you a little bit of evidence as to why I'm still sticking with my potential Category 4 or 5 or a 3, guys. A 3 would be devastating to any area it hit up here. We're becoming desensitized to these storms being category 4 and 5. Anything below that, people don't take seriously, and that is a big, big mistake. That is why they issued the state of emergency. It's not me doing this. I'm not trying to induce fear into anyone. These states are issuing states of emergency, so they are taking this seriously, as everyone else should be that lives in any of these areas, including Texas. They are not out of the loop yet. And the reason that I have that as a possible projection is because Nate can do one of two things. Nate will either continue on its path and clip Cancun here, which will stunt its growth, and that will help out the U.S. states. It'll be horrible for Cancun, another vacation area that may take a lot of damage, a lot of beach erosion where most of their tourists go. I had someone on Twitter ask me if they should go there this weekend. They had a trip planned, and I don't want to be the person to stop anyone from going on a vacation, but if this storm's heading right towards Cancun and you were planning on going there for the weekend, I would absolutely cancel that trip and postpone it to another time. This is not something to mess with. Louisiana and Florida, as of now, are not messing with it. I can only assume Mississippi and Alabama are going to follow suit. But really quick, guys, if this thing possibly shoots the gap, shooting the gap is a term they use at the National Hurricane Center for storms that pass right into this gap between Cancun and I believe the Gulf of Batabano, if I'm pronouncing that right. Nate has the potential to do that, and now the reason for that is if you see this system up in Florida, it's a low pressure system, and if you remember, I've been saying in past videos, low pressure are attracted to low pressure. Once they get to within about 900 miles of each other, they tend to interact, and that's where we get those things called the Fujiwara effect, where two storms get within about 900 miles and they begin to dance around each other. Often one survives, the other one doesn't. They don't usually combine into superstorms like the movie Perfect Storm. Although I believe it is possible. I don't know if we'll see it ever, but we don't want to see it. But regardless, if this thing does change its track a little bit, which it's showing that it's doing, if you look at these models here, this black line with the triangles on it, that is the current direction. You'll sometimes see this thing shooting off in a weird direction outside of all the spaghetti models. That's because that's the direction it's currently heading. That's what this black triangle's for. And a couple hours ago, this triangle was shooting this way, right towards Texas. They did expect it to shift to the east. That's why you don't really follow this model unless you're looking for the current direction, but it's moving more to the east. And now, if this thing, once it gets into these warm waters, it's going to grow in this area. There's no doubt about it. It's going to happen. The eye of it will be in the warmest of the waters in the Caribbean. If this system does begin to interact with Nate and Nate shifts any more to the east, we could have a deal where it shoots the gap. And if it does that, that means it has no land interaction to stop it, which means from here, this area, once it leaves the coast of Honduras, all the way up through Sunday, around when it's projected to make possible landfall, it's going to have no land interaction, and it can absolutely grow into a category 4 or 5. All these waters are a prime deal for hurricane growth, especially in this area. We're talking 85, 86, uncommonly warm. These waters, they were saying, are warmer than usual right now, and even just the momentum it's going to gain in this area, it may rapid grow here, and then shoot the gap and then slowly keep growing all the way into basically a landfall deal. So it almost seems selfish, but in a way, as far as the U.S. goes, we want it to actually clip Mexico or Cancun to stunt its growth before it gets to the coast. Again, guys, they are issuing states of emergency. This isn't me trying to scare people. These are the possibilities of this storm, and that's why I put emphasis on a possible Cat 4 or Cat 5 storm. If it does shoot the gap, that is going to be a likely outcome, at least a Category 3, which would be devastating to these prone areas for storm surge. Lots of wind, lots of rain, obviously. This is a rainmaker storm. 17 deaths already in Nicaragua. That's a big deal, guys. This is nothing to mess with at all. Just to give you a quick idea of what I'm talking about, I'm going to have a more extensive video that I'm already currently working on with detailed information here. But just, for example, the nav gem here shows this thing literally shooting the gap. This is what we're talking about. If it passes between Cancun and the Gulf of Batabano, That means no land interaction. That means all it's going to do is strengthen from the second it leaves the coast of Honduras all the way up into the Gulf, and that would be the worst case scenario. Where it goes from there, we just don't know yet. That's why we have such a wide range of states of emergency. I can't imagine that Mississippi and Alabama are not going to issue the same states of emergency if they haven't already. But guys, there's potential that this thing could shoot the gap. And if it does that, once again, that is where the category 4, all right, I'll even say category 3, 4 to 5 are extreme possibilities with no land interaction. And that's why I'm stressing this situation. And I was trying to explain that to some people in the comments section that were almost calling me crazy for even saying that because they're projecting it to be a Cat 1. Guys, you got to remember, Maria was projected to be a Cat 1 as well, and it turned into a Category 5 and devastated Puerto Rico. Because of warm water, it's not like it took 4 days to grow, it took 26 hours. And we are dealing with more time than that between the warm waters in this area of the Caribbean and then once it enters the Gulf. I will be back with a longer video for you guys, much more detailed into what NATE is currently doing and what it may do in this area of the warm water. People in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida, you guys need to be ready for this. You need to start making preparations. This thing will make landfall, whether it's a tropical storm or a Category 5. Texas as well, you need to be aware. There could be a shift in this thing as well. If it doesn't interact with the system over Florida, we could be looking at more of a western track. But if, again, I'll show you the spaghetti models, this black triangle line, this was in this direction a couple hours ago, so it is shifting towards the east. If it does that anymore, we are dealing with a shooting the gap situation, which would be the worst case scenario. All right, guys, I will be back shortly. Thank you for hanging on. I'll talk to you all very soon.